Well, Alero, well, you're a grandma now, so you may not really understand some of the challenges that some people are going through in terms of children resuming school. But I've had the privilege of speaking with some family life practitioners. And one of the things that they often talk about is the importance, particularly when it comes to education, is the importance of parent-teacher partnership. And so one wonders what some of those challenges are. Well, what exactly are we talking about here? We'll hear from our guests, but the essence of a parent-teacher partnership should be grounded in the idea that both of them, both parents and teachers, have a significant role to play in the lives of their children. What those roles are and how those roles are played out, those are some of the things we want to talk about this morning. So, who is our guest, Alero?
Maybe Hajia Amina Yunus Ali, who's a family therapist. She's a friend of the house.
Yeah.
She's been here on several occasions talking about children. It's always about children.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I'm glad to be here.
You don't blame her, do you? But let me ask you, my apologies, Alero, I know you want to, but let me ask you, madam.
Yes, sir.
When we talk about parent-teacher partnership, give us a real-life scenario what a functional parent-teacher partnership should look like.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. That part of the functional parent-teacher partnerships, because a lot of times let me define it first. A functional one would look like where parents can freely communicate about the goals, values, expectations of their child's development effectively with the teachers, who apparently also spend a significant amount of time with the parents and with the children more often than not than the children spend with their parents. So it is a cohesive, integrated connection where both parents and teachers are on board as to what most suits that child and how it can empower that child, enhance the child's unique talents, and then help them develop more effectively and more holistically, not just cognitively, not just academically, but in a more holistic sense. So that's what a functional parent-teacher partnership would look like.
And I think that is very, very important when you said holistic.
Yes.
Now, the reason I think it is important is because most of the time when parents look at the results of their children's performance in school, they're looking at how many grades did she pass maths, English, and the other important ones, particularly because they have in mind that this child is going to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, so they are looking at those subjects. Absolutely. So please speak a little further, when you talk about holistic development. Okay. How is that important, and how do parents decrypt that? What should they be looking out for? What kind of conversations should they have with the teachers? What kind of conversation should happen between parents and teachers, particularly in the area of holistic development of the child?
Okay, so let me break it down this way. On an average, a typical adolescent will spend 9 hours in school each day. Now, within that 9 hours, they are either doing one academic work or the other, maths, English, sciences, arts, literature, whatever. And then they are most likely also doing sports, right? But they are also being exposed to peer-to-peer relationships, peer-to-authority relationships. They are also undergoing now in most schools, like I think I've been opportune to see, we are also having certain vocational aptitude lessons within that. But on a holistic exposure or a well-balanced holistic exposure for the child would also mean we'll look at the cognitive, behavioral, social interactions of that child, as well as the emotional capabilities of that child. What we do find is that the child or the teachers will pay attention to the cognitive part, which is what deals with the academia and their, they would also, and the grades, right? They would also pay attention to the social. But now the social is talking about how well they're performing in sports or how well they are a team player and things like that. The other side of it, the behavioral and the emotional, they expect the parents to, be on top of that, right? And it's okay if you expect the parents to also be at the forefront of this. But like I mentioned, 9 times 5 days a week is like 36 hours. And even some of the students, they have weekend classes. They go to, they're either having an extracurricular activity or they're preparing for one exam or the other and things like that. And then you look at the number of hours the parents have left to spend with the child, and it's not fair to expect that parents would be able to do all those things. Now, the partnership, the functional partnership would come in if the parent also know who their child is. But what we find is that parents expect the teachers to fix everything. From the moment they are in the KG or baby class, we expect the teachers to do everything, feed them, bathe them, teach them how to say please, yes, thank you. Because we are also having this hustle culture that demands more from parents and expects that the school should be the altar parent in this case. Now, the dysfunction that is not showing up in this non-holistic sense is that teachers are overwhelmed. They are overwhelmed with having to take care of the cognitive and the social, and they are missing out on what they need because, truth be told, not all of them even know what it takes to pay attention to the behavioral needs, the emotional needs of a typical child, not to mention the atypical child. So we are not having this over flooding of the diseases that I call them. I call them the diseases, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and teachers are like, how do we deal with this? And then still be effective in helping them meet their cognitive targets and the social targets, not to mention the emotional challenges that the children are now having.
I find it interesting that you are already going into the details of the cognitive conversation, and how it affects the behavioral. Many times, even now, some parents and teachers looking at us and watching this program and listening may or may not even find themselves on the wrong side of this conversation. Many times when parents look at the grades, there is the unfortunate expectation, I don't know what better word to use, that they usually sometimes compare the grades of their child with that of another child as some kind of measure that child is doing good in school. In school, forgetting that behavioral development is a constraint or an embellishment of cognitive performance in school. Help us understand that balance and why parents need to pay attention to the holistic development of the child and not just measure the development of that child on the grades.
I think for me, it's recognizing that not all the children in the class can be first. And life is competitive. I heard teachers say this a lot, that life is competitive, so we have to push them, we have to make it competitive, we have to get the best of the best of the best, I mean, we listened to Junior Achievement Nigeria a short while ago, and we're talking about 100 out of thousands of selection. It is a natural phenomenon that there will be competition. For parents, it is understanding what your child's strengths are. Your child's strength may not immediately be academics, but they can thrive in the social connection. And that's one thing I do. So I remember a time when when my daughter just started out school, and, her teacher was pretty young. I'm pretty sure she didn't have a child of her own then. And I know who my child is a pretty social learner. Prior to having taken her to school, I thought that I was going to homeschool this child. But knowing the kind of person she is, I know she can only thrive in a social space. Now, social space does not necessarily mean that this child, or any child for that matter, would be able to immediately grasp concepts and context of academics. However, they can and they will thrive in helping to network other students in the classroom. And those are the things that ideally a parent should be able to know. But this would only be obvious if the parent is paying attention. On the flip side is also recognizing that even in the classroom, the teachers have to understand that as much as they are encouraging competition, the competitions have to be healthy. And I think we need to begin, the balance would be in understanding that there is no blame or shaming, or it's the parents' fault that they are not doing this, or it is the teacher's fault that they are not paying attention or they are not helping the child well enough. We need to begin to have conversations about what can we, emphasis on the we, what can we do to help this child thrive in all the facets, but excel in that unique strength that they do have, be it sports, be it theater, be it arts, be it academics, be it sciences, whatever it is that the child's unique strength is, how can we enhance that, but also help them pay attention to other things and to have conversations. So when you go to your child's, opening day, for instance, what conversations do we have with teachers? How come my son is scoring 5/10 in sciences, but scoring 10/10 in arts? Because again, you already have this preconceived idea of who your child is. The grade is only showing you a part. I'd rather have conversations around how does my child play in the classroom? How does the teamwork work for her in the classroom? How can I help her to do more?
Relate with other children.
Relate with other children. What is she struggling with? Yeah. It's not just about the grades. It's also about knowing how I can, help you to make your job easier as a teacher.
Ajia, I'll have you know that when we were in school, there was nothing like Parents-Teachers Association. There was nothing like open day. Our parents hardly had any connection with our teachers, but we got by somehow.
I agree with you.
So what is the big deal about
this partnership? But then your parents didn't have just to take care of you alone. If they had to go to work, they had someone close they can trust you with, who would also provide and what the school is not providing, an all-present parenting presence. And that is what every child needs. An opportunity to be safe, an opportunity to be seen, an opportunity to be suited, an opportunity to feel secure. Now, the first three would dictate the third. So when we talk about how a child feels or how a child develops to the optimal level, regardless of how their academics looks like, we are talking about how well adjusted that child is. Yeah. Because we also know that even corporate organizations these days, they'll ask you for emotional intelligence abilities. And the only place that you can learn this is through interactions. Now, who does the child interact with the most? And who is the secondary authority in a child's life? So it is often the parents, the teacher, the clergy, if you are spiritual, and then the community. But we begin to also notice that the community is dropping off. So in your days, you had a community. It takes a village. My very close friend recently just gave birth, and she was talking about, there's no village anywhere because it's just me having to do with a newborn and then two other children, and it can be tough. It is draining for parents. But if that parent-teachers association can play that effective role of becoming the village, and we stop blaming and shaming each other and assuming that we are constantly so if a child behaves badly, I don't believe there's any bad child, right? Now, if a child behaves badly or misbehaves in school, what you would most likely hear in the in the corridors or school corridors is, maybe her parents didn't teach her well. But if the child felt safe in school and misbehaves, the teacher can stand up and say, you know what, something is going on here. I believe you can do better than what you're doing right now. How can I help? And that child begins to feel two of the seen and soothed, and then she begins to feel safe. And that begins to also affect how that child relates at home. But if a child comes back home quiet, no problem, And the parent is always saying, she's not talking, or he's not talking, I don't even know how to reach her, and goes to the school, and the child is all social and happy and thriving. The parent can take a cue and say, okay, so something is going on at home. That I need to pay attention to, that is making this child quiet and reticent, and I need to begin to foster a healthier lifestyle. But you wouldn't know if you don't go to the school to go and check what other environment is this child thriving in that I'm not paying attention to, or what other environment is influencing this child. And these are the things, these are the conversations that we need to have as a community, so that we are constantly in that space of knowing that no matter what is going on with our children, the parents have the overall authority, but they can rely on partners. Partners being the child's teachers, the school itself, because it's not just the teacher. I've seen cases where even teachers are good at trying to help the child, but you find the director or the school environment more toxic than not. And then the child, the teachers are handicapped by the expectations. Oh, they have to meet a particular grade level for the state to approve them, or for the state to ratify their existence. And this goes on and on and on. So it goes back to being a village.
You mentioned something earlier about you said it in passing, homeschooling.
Yeah.
But I caught on to it, and I was going to ask you, I think more and more children are homeschooled now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what the reason is, but what would be the benefits if you want your child to thrive and to have interactions with other children, interactions with teachers, interactions with other people apart from parents at home? What would be the benefits?
There are benefits to it, really. And so I would often advise that, don't put your child in homeschool if you haven't tested the child in a social learning space first, to know how well the child can cope. But there are significant things to also identify with a child, because not all children are born the same. So I mentioned earlier that one of the reasons that I wanted to homeschool was I didn't like the fact that it's the same curriculum, the same expectations, the same bar that different children with different personalities have to cross every now and then, right? But noticing from the get-go. So my daughter wasn't one that, I took the first day of school, most children would cry. My daughter said, she was 3 years old, she said, bye-bye, mommy, I'll see you later.
Well, what happened on day 2? What happened?
Day 2 was the same thing.
Oh, because many of them say bye-bye, mommy, because they've seen
day 2 was
people
the same
their height.
I had zero problem with leaving her in school. I was the one frightened at home. Now, I've seen her cousins, right, when they were starting school. And it was also like, when are you coming to pick me? I'm tired of this place. I want you to go home, right? And you would look at how different that is. But you would also expect the same children to mix and to be the same way all the time. There are children who are good in academics, but they need that one-on-one connection to say, I see you. I know you're struggling with this. What do you need? There are children who already have exposure to anxiety, perhaps through birth deficiencies or difficult pregnancies that their parents had. So they already have a congenital anxiety or predisposed to depression right from birth. And then you put them in this big room with other children playing and shouting, and you're expecting them to thrive. These are the children that are often left behind or labeled. And they would have done well if all they had was just one person looking at them and saying, I see this. I know you can do this. I believe in you. I know that. But a typical teacher has 15 students to take care of.
Yeah.
What time does he or she have to do that?
In fact,
to every
15
child?
is a small number.
I
Some
know,
classes
right?
are 35.
Exactly. And I'm even thinking about it in terms of private schools. Public schools is a way different.
Yeah.
So what time does that, before the teacher takes care of the lesson plans for the next day, ensures that they are meeting up to the quota that the federal government has given them? It's a whole lot. But that is what we're saying. And I think that's where the awareness of parents need to come in, like parenting 101 class, know who your child is. No child is born the same. They may all come from you, but know who your child is, know their personality, know what their love language is speaking about, know what they are inclined to. So, and you can see this in how the play. You can see this in social interactions. Homeschool facilitators now, I do know that they also organize peer social learning. So it is limited interaction, but it also fosters the social learning concerns that people who are in the general school or in the typical school also have to go through. But the needs are different, and it is all about knowing what is best for the child. So no child is left behind.
Is there any way that technology can help in this relationship?
Yeah, technology does. Technology provides information. It provides campaigns and awareness and advocacy for the child. But it's also about recognizing that not all children are going to be caught up in the frenzy of the digital era. Some of the students still need to play in the sand. They need to feel water. They need to get messy.
Which many of them don't get these days.
Exactly. But then because we are still driven towards, we want our children to be technologically advanced, we are missing out on that. The holistic part, like I mentioned earlier, also has to do with the need to feel. And you can only feel texture. You can, you could type all you want, but you can texturize sand and water and clay dough, and all those things.
My children always used to ask me in those days, you people didn't have mobile phones, you didn't have computers. So how did you all play? I said, you'd be surprised.
Oh,
we played.
And we had fun, right?
We played with sand.
And that's what fosters friendship, isn't it?
Doing 10-10.
Yes.
And listening to Tales by Moonlight.
Absolutely. And those were things that also increased our intuition and our inquisitivity and encourages us to want to know more and to do more. So technology is good, but it is the balance. Always keen into what is important for the child and what makes the child even more interesting and interesting.
Interesting. Every time we talk about children, we get fresh insights. I remember the 14-year-old, I'm going through a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And in all of this conversation that you have had with Madam, one of the things that continues to play on my head is, at the end of it all, the parent is more central than the parent is aware of. The result of whatever the child becomes is not just subject to what the child produces, but what the child inputs into the child. That's what I'm taking away from what you're saying, Madam. That the parent is more central in the education of their child
than they think.
School. And that partnership has to happen. If that partnership will happen, parents are very important.
Have to be interested, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming, Hajia Amina Yunus Ali, a family therapist and coach.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for always answering every time we call.
It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being with us thus far. We have reached the home stretch. See you in just a moment.